Much like other progressive lawmakers who easily got reelected, Representative Ilhan Omar did in fact win her reelection bid in Minnesota's 5th congressional district. And of course, prior to the election, it was reported that she was up for a tough reelection bid. There was all this fear mongering. She's probably gonna struggle. There's all this money coming in to her opponent. But early Wednesday, Representative Omar was leading her chief opponent, Melton Mew, by more than 17 percentage points. I mean, that number might have changed a little bit since this morning, but that's a pretty wide margin, John. Now, Ilhan Omar tweeted the following: in Minnesota, we know that organized people will always beat organized money. Tonight, our movement didn't just win. We earned a mandate for change. Despite outside efforts to defeat us, we once again broke turnout records. Despite the attacks, our support has only grown. And just to give you an idea of how much money was poured into her opponent's candidacy, during the second quarter of 2020, Melton Mew raised 6 times as much as Omar did, and an analysis from the Minnesota Post, I'm guessing, showed about 20% of his large dollar donations came with bundling from pro-Israel political action committees. So one thing that Representative Omar is known for and both criticized for is her criticism of Israel's right-wing government. And so she was certainly a target for AIPAC, for instance, but apparently that money wasn't powerful enough to defeat her message.
Yeah, that's true. And I know that it's a totally needless sidetrack, but I love that, like, you would never have like from bundling from a pro-America PAC. Like, what do you mean pro the whole country? Don't you have to be a little bit more specific about that? I know that's how it works in American politics. Anyway, yeah, she was outraised significantly in that last quarter. And when you go around the country and you look at the money disparity in the original races for some of these candidates and for the re-election races as well, like being outspent 6 times is actually kind of competitive for the progressive. I mean, there was down in the race in Kentucky, I think it was a 48 times disparity, if I remember correctly. This massive amount, and so on top of all of the advantages that I would point out to the establishment, like you could really save some money if you back some of these progressives. Maybe we wouldn't have to spend so much needlessly duking it out to reassert the establishment's control over these seats. Anyway, in terms of her winning, it's great news. It would have been horrible to lose any members of the squad. They've basically been the only things keeping myself and a lot of other people feeling like there's any reason for optimism in American politics for a couple of years now. And knowing that we're gonna have all of them, and they're gonna have support from new congressmen and women in just 6 months or so, that's definitely a good feeling. And when I think about the lessons that we can take from the fact that Ilhan Omar won re-election and that all the other members of the squad have, I think automatically about the insufferable things that would have been said had they lost. And then I just think about, well, clearly we've learned the opposite then. Because they would, think about if they'd lost, if AOC had lost, or if Ilhan had lost, it would be, first of all, your positions are way too radical. Out of the mainstream, no one's gonna actually accept that. Maybe they'll be excited and they'll be confused initially, but then they're gonna learn who you are, they're gonna move on. That clearly isn't true. Saying these extreme things and really making a big spectacle of yourself, trying to dominate the conversation, having protests in Capitol Hill, all of this stuff is a career killer, they might have said, but it hasn't happened. Rashida Tlaib, she was criticized for coming out in support of Trump's impeachment early and vocally, and they won re-election. So maybe there are some lessons to be learned here. I guess it's not in my financial interest to not learn them though. For some people, that's not the case.
Well, look, I agree with you. I think that especially after Bernie Sanders' defeat, it was important to show that progressive ideology, progressive policy is still a priority for a lot of voters in the country. And it's not just about the squad getting reelected, although I agree that's incredibly important. We now have more progressives elected into Congress. You have Jamal Bowman, for instance, you have Cori Bush. We're gonna fight like hell to get Alex Morse elected, even though the corporate Democrats are doing everything they can to try to destroy his candidacy with nonsense. And we will talk about that a little bit later. But this was, I think a lot of people saw this election as a test for progressive ideology. And I do think that we're just right. We're just right on the policies. And this presidential election, I think, has a lot to do with people who are fearful. They don't want to see Trump get reelected. And ultimately it was about ensuring that the most electable person, quote unquote, goes to, basically goes against Trump, right? Now, I obviously disagree that Biden was like the strongest candidate against Trump, but it doesn't matter. That's what voters were voting on. And luckily in this case with Congress, we are winning some seats and making sure that progressives get reelected. I do also want to show you some of the quick wishful thinking maybe that went on in the media. So I'm just gonna give you a few examples of the headlines that many of us saw prior to this congressional race. One of them reads, Ilhan Omar's career on the line in tough primary. That was from Politico, wrong again. Al Jazeera wrote, US Representative Ilhan Omar readies for tough primary challenge. And I'll read one more for you. Squad members Rashida Tlaib, who got reelected, Ilhan Omar, who got reelected, facing tough primary challengers. Not so much, I guess, not so much. Turns out that sometimes message and policy is far more effective than outside money. Yeah, just keeping it real.
Want to win a free electric scooter? Well, our partners at Aspiration and Zoom Electric are making it possible. All you have to do is head to tyt.com/greensummer for your chance to win.